I will bring you back to the land of Israel, and then you, my people, will know that I am the Lord. I will open your graves and bring you up from them. I will put my spirit in you, and you will live and settle in your own land. Receive that prophetically, magically. And I'm going to stop now. Yes? Peace be unto you.
Purposes only. African bloodlines did not begin with suffering, they began with sovereignty. Africans carry the primordial Edenic codes, the original resonance of Earth in her untampered form. And this isn't just spiritual, it's energetic biology. These codes are embedded in the mitochondrial DNA, in the melanin, in the soul memory of Earth's first divine experiment in physical form. Your frequency potential is not just higher, it's wider. And it's not about being higher on a ladder, but having access to the full keyboard of creation. Frequencies of light, sound, magnetism, and even pre-verbal communication are all encoded within your ancestral field. You can access multiple timelines and realms faster than those who carry diluted or altered genetic memory if you are spiritually activated, not suppressed by trauma, substances, parasitic implants, vaccines, and societal programming. This is why controllers fear you so deeply. The parasitic matrix specifically targets African bloodlines with distractions, engineered suffering, and spiritual amnesia. And if reawakened, you can not only collapse the matrix, but reseed Eden herself. And there are 3 frequency secrets. Your melanin is a conductor of multidimensional light. It is not pigment. It's an antenna that's living. It translates divine frequency into cellular command. African DNA carries untouched Atlantean and Lemurian memory. There were encoded voices speaking in harmony with Earth. That memory still exists within you, waiting to be triggered. The Edenic line holds the key to collective resurrection. When the true heirs reclaim their soul sovereignty, the frequency net shatters, and even the stars will.
Hello. Let me talk about the lost truth of the African bloodline. Now, when I talk about unity and everything, sometimes I get comments that don't keep talking about unity because we can't do that. But I want to say this. I will talk about unity of black people until my days come, or until we achieve, because I know what unity can bring. I have read, I've seen the patterns of history. I have seen how Black Wall Street was built. I have seen how Kenyans united as Gen Zs and they changed everything. I have seen how Burkina Faso are uniting and they are changing the world. So I know what unity can bring. So I can never stop talking about unity. Now, the lost truth of the African bloodline, because they thought they erased everyone, they erased us from history. They thought they buried our greatness beneath their lies. But what they didn't know is that you can't bury a bloodline that was born divine. You can't silence a people chosen by creation itself. And right now, from Africa to America, from the Caribbean to Europe, the African bloodline is reconnecting and it is remembering who it is. Grand Rising Kings and Queens, welcome so much. I love you and I honor you and I thank you for always showing up with open hearts and open minds. I see your comments and I'm like, wow, you are not watching this by coincidence. You are meant to be here today because this message is not just information, but it is an awakening. Now, before I continue with my video, I want you to watch these clips here and then we continue.
Within weeks, I had booked a flight and I was in Sierra Leone, just to see what it was like to experience the land that my lineage, my ancestors came from. And I was so well received. It didn't stop just in Freetown. They took me all the way back to the village of the Mende people and had like thousands of people celebrating and drums and music and food and all this stuff to receive myself and my wife and welcome us back to our tribe. Wow. African garb, African jewelry, African names. They bestowed upon me the name Bambaga, which means the son of the soil. And Bambanya was my wife's African given name, which means the daughter of the soil. So we got to meet the chief and the children. We got to eat with our hands. It was a emotional experience. And that cultural piece that came along with it, sitting at the foot of your elders, going to the graveyard and was like, here, you've lost 400 years of history. Here's the last 400 years of chiefs and paramount chiefs and scouts and warriors from your lineage. How powerful is that to sit on the graveyard of your lineage and then bring that history back home to your children and your family? It was an amazing opportunity to reconnect. The door opened through service. And my letter of expression was just to serve as like maybe like an honorary consul or something in the United States where I could have some tie back to the continent and serve local Sierra Leoneans here in America. And I was like, no, brother, you need to be special. So we're going to appoint you as a special envoy for trade and investment based on my background and give you the title of an ambassador. So wherever you go in the world, they have to acknowledge you as His Excellency. Now, could you imagine the power coming from the names we've been called in our past, right? To now have to be called His Excellency. Brother, my eyes was watering up. Yeah. You understand the dynamic just by showing up on the continent, just by going back home and going in the presence of service. I got bestowed on me one of the highest honors that you can be appointed as an ambassador and a special envoy. So that's kind of how the process began.
That tells you is that the genetic diversity within Africa as the origin of our species is greater than it is between any other two people anywhere else in the world. But because the anthropologists were not thinking genetic diversity, they're thinking skin color. They put them all in one bin. But if you have the most genetic diversity, then in practically every way humans vary, you would find the extreme of that in the African continent. Where would you find the tallest people in the world? How about the shortest people in the world?
Pygmies.
The pygmies. Where might you find the slowest people in the world? Well, no one looks for them. How about the fastest people? Africa. How about the smartest person in the world? Africa. The Europeans did not look for people smarter than they were. Okay? And to this day, where they find evidence where that might have been the case, you have people saying aliens did it. So my point is, if you don't look for it and you don't find it and you're going to create a map of humans of the world, you're going to put yourself at the top. What that tells you is that...
So let's be fucking honest. We all know the black community hold all the fucking weight. We hold the power. But the power only shows when we come as fucking one. We've been taught to compete with each other instead of collaborate. To doubt each other instead of investing in each other. But we need to work together. We need to build community. When we come together with love instead of ego, let's take out the fucking ego, people. That's when a real magic is gonna fucking happen. And that's when we could shift fucking generations. But we keep talking. Talking is not going to get us no fucking where. You could do all the podcasts. We just yapping. We need to do this. We need to do that. We all know what the fuck we need to do. So when y'all really ready to change some shit and really build a fucking community, call me. Other than that, we're just yapping. Like right now, I'm yapping. We're not taking no fucking action. I'm done. We all know what the fuck we need to do. We just talking. We all know what the fuck we need to do. Let's be fucking real. So when y'all ready?
This message is for my Afro people all across the globe. If you are not Afro, just go ahead and keep scrolling because this is not for you. But my people, for centuries, we've been told that we are less. In America, we've been called lazy, criminal, uneducated. In Africa, we've been told this lie of poverty, backwardness, mockery of our languages and our culture. Even in the Caribbean, we've been painted as nothing more than servants or entertainers, violent. In South America, our communities are often completely erased as though they were never even existing. We're seen as outsiders. We're always at the bottom of the ladder, no matter what country you go to. And that conditioning, it didn't happen by accident. It was designed to make us doubt ourselves, to turn against our own beauty and our own cultures, from skin bleaching to rejecting our natural hair and our natural hairstyles, to believing that our food, our music, or our accents were somehow inferior. We've been taught to disconnect completely from who we are and where we come from. Our histories have been stolen. Our culture has been completely removed or told that we don't even have one. But here's the honest truth. We are the soul of every society we have ever touched. Our creativity, our resilience, our spirit have completely shaped this world. In the moment we stop repeating those narratives that we have been taught and we start loving ourselves deeply and affirming ourselves, we will step into the true power that was meant for us. We're reaching a very strong turning point across America, Africa, Caribbean, Europe, South America. We must see ourselves and we must see each other with love. No more division, no more lies. We are a global family. And with awakening, it begins with reloving ourselves and reloving each other. Let's start this today.
Remember who you are. Remember who you are. Come on, sit down. Let's talk. I need y'all to understand the magnitude in which you have been programmed to forget who you are. You know why we can't find the ancient ones? You know why people don't believe that the ancient ones exist? Is because the ancient ones are already here. We are here. We've never left. We've been imprisoned, programmed in our mind to believe that all of what we see now is reality and is real, and that all that ancient old stuff is BS. We're here. We never left. And then not only have we been programmed, but then we've been given these religious indoctrinations to further push the narrative. Look to heaven, look to the stars, they want you to do everything but look within yourself because they don't want you to remember who you are. Do you know how old I am? Do you know how ancient I am? Do you know how ancient you are? Do you know? I need y'all to understand and stop utilizing these distraction tactics. They have us bamboozled and swindled. Y'all worried about physical prison. You're already in prison because they done took you here. That's who they are. They are the dark ones. They took us. They imprisoned us. And they programmed simulation after simulation after simulation after simulation that went through generation for you to forget who you are. Do you know how far down in the sunken place they put us for us to not remember we are the ancient ones who roam the earth? Distraction tactics, sorcery. They want you to care about your BBLs. They want you to care about the fact that Jimmy Fox done popped up all over the place. They want you to care about race riots. They want you to care about all this nonsense. Why? Because it's smoke and mirrors. It's something bigger but happening behind the scenes. You have no idea the kind of power that the three most wealthiest families in this reality are really working with to keep everyone sleep in the sunken place. Remember who you are. Fuck the smoke and mirrors. Look behind the scenes. All the synchronicities, if you're seeing signs, you're seeing symbols, you're seeing synchronicities, it's because you were being called to remember who you are. All the tools that we utilize in spirituality, there's just tools. Because you're you, they are totems. For you to remember who you are. It is a roadmap to get back to who you are as an ancient being. Remember who you are. Their sorcery is great, but ours is greater. You're being called to wake up at this time because there's work to be done. There's work. Reclaim your power. Reclaim who you are. Remember who you are.
Welcome back. For centuries, we have been told a version of history that is not ours. That starts with chains, colonization. We have been told history that do not start with the crowns, that do not start with who we exactly are. Before the slave ship came, before colonization came, before the name Africa was even placed in our motherland, we were nations of scientists. We were nations of mathematicians. We were nations of builders. We were nations of philosophers. Dr. John Henry Clark once said, history is a clock that people use to tell their political and cultural time of day. History is a compass that they use to find themselves on the map of human geography. Now, for generations, our clock was stolen, our compass was shattered, and they made sure that we could not tell time or direction in our own story, but now the hands of history are moving again. When Marcus Garvey said in 1920 that a people without knowledge of their past history or their past or their origin or their culture is like a tree without roots. And that's exactly what they tried to make us be. That's exactly what they tried to make us black people, Africans think. People or a tree without roots. They took the children of Africa and scattered them to the four corners of the world. And then they gave them new names. They gave them new gods. They gave them new language. But deep inside, the rhythm of the ancestors never stopped beating. You see, no matter how far you are taken as a black person, no matter how far you are taken, our blood carried memory, our DNA carried history, and now, in this generation, that memory is reawakening again. When we look back at ancient Kemet, what the world calls Egypt, we are seeing evidence of black brilliance written on stone, in stone. Pyramids that origin perfectly with the stars. Mathematics so advanced that the medium scientists or the modern scientists still can't fathom. Medicine, philosophy, and spirituality that gave birth to what the Greeks later claimed it is theirs. Allow me to quote a Senegalese historian and anthropologist called Sheikh Anta Diop. He said this, and I quote, "The history of black Africa will remain suspended in air and cannot be written correctly until African historians dare to connect it with history of Egypt." You get me that? That was his warning. The Africa's true history begins not with slavery, but with civilization itself. And when you dare to connect the dots, you find that the African bloodline didn't just build pyramids, but it built the foundation of human progress. But here's the tragedy and the awakening at the same time. When colonizers arrived, they didn't just come for gold and land, but they came for identity. They knew that to enslave a person physically, you first have to enslave them mentally. And the most powerful way to do that is rewriting their own history. They rewrote maps, they renamed kingdoms, they destroyed libraries, and they unalived the teachers who held the ancient wisdom. They told us that we are primitive, that when or while they were the civilized ones. But the funny thing is that they learned civilization from us. They told us black people or Africans that we were cursed while they were the chosen. But we are the original people. We are the original chosen. Dr. Clark said, to control a people, you must first control what they think about themselves and how they regard their history and culture. And that's why they never wanted us to know who we were. Because once we did, we'll remember that we are not just descendants of slaves, but we are descendants of kings, queens, scholars, and innovators. Now, there is a hidden truth here of our bloodline that I need to share. Before colonization, Africa was not one monolithic land of chaos, as they portray it in their history books. Africa was a collection of powerful nations like Mali, Songhai, Benin, Nubia, Kush, Kemet, Axum, Zimbabwe, and many, many more. Empires that traded gold, empires that traded salt, empires that traded science and culture with the rest of the Asian world. The Mali Empire alone was so rich Even when Mansa Musa, this is the story from the history. When Mansa Musa, the emperor, traveled to Mecca in 1934, or not 1934, I'm sorry, traveled to Mecca in 1324. He gave away so much gold that he caused inflation in Egypt for years. And that's not poverty, that is power. That is not savagery. Why do modern textbooks rarely speak of this? They don't because of what? Because they needed to create a world where blackness was associated with weakness. They couldn't let us know that we once ruled global trade, mathematics, medicine, and architecture. And Marcus Garvey said that if you have no confidence in self, then you are twice defeated in this race of life. And that's why they targeted our self-confidence. They wanted us to feel inferior, to feel less of ourselves. Because once the African bloodline lost confidence, then it became easier to control, manipulate, and exploit. But here's where the story takes a divine turn. Even though bloodline was scattered, from Ghana to Georgia or Congo, Caribbean, we remained spiritually connected. And that connection is what they could never break. And that's why even after centuries or centuries of oppression, black people everywhere still rise. Black people everywhere still create. We still innovate. We still lead in culture. Because our ancestors' greatness didn't die. It simply just traveled through generations. You may see from the blues of hip-hop, the spiritual to soul music, from Yoruba rhythms and jazz, our creativity is a coded language of memory, and every drum beat, every melody, every word spoken in pride, it is a place of history echoing back to the sources. Allow me to quote what Malcolm X once said, that we didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us. He wasn't just talking about rocks here or about America. He was talking about the global weight of oppression that tried to crush the African bloodline. But what happens when the rock can no longer hold down the roots? Then the roots break through. So now, my brothers and sisters, as we enter this new age of awakening, Africa is calling. And his descendants of Africa are awakening, or are answering. We are remembering the truth that has been buried under this for 500 years. As we remember, we are rising. This is why you are seeing global shift happening, young Africans reclaiming their power, or black Americans reconnecting with the continent. Caribbean, on the other hand, they are rediscovering their heritage in all one movement. It is all one spirit. Because the African bloodline is not defined by borders. It is defined by destiny. And no matter how hard they try to destroy us, they could never erase the divine code within our DNA, written in our DNA. We are the original builders, the original thinkers, the original creators. And our time has come again. They tried to erase our identity because they could not destroy our bloodlines. What they did, they tried to erase our memory, because they couldn't kill our spirit too. So they tried to rewrite who the African is. But they did not realize one thing, that when you try to bury truth, it becomes a seed. And that seed grows stronger than the lie ever could. And how they did this was like manipulation and psychological warfare. When colonization began, Europeans didn't just bring armies, but they brought narratives. They erased empires from textbooks. They made sure that generations of children will grow up thinking blackness equals to backwardness. And this is where Dr. John Henry Clark explained it best and said Europeans not only colonized most of the world, but they colonized information of the world. They didn't just take our land, but they took our story. They turned our heroes into villains and their villains into heroes. They told the world that Africa had no history before Europeans arrived. But we built the pyramids. Remember that when Europe was still in caves? And they told that our gods was evil, and yet their religion was used to justify genocide. They used education as a tool of erasure. They use religion and cultural reprogramming. A lot of things happened. A lot. I'll say this. What we are witnessing right now, the uniting, the remembering and everything, is more than politics. It is prophecy meeting purpose, because for centuries the African bloodline was scattered, but right now, for the first time in the modern history, the sons and daughters of Africa are reconnecting on the global stage, and they're on the global destiny. You see? Look at what's happening in diaspora. Black Americans are traveling to Africa. They are going to Ghana. They are going to Kenya. They are going to Tanzania. The year of returning in Ghana was a game changer. And for the first time in 400 years, descendants of enslaved returned to the land of their ancestors in peace. Not in chains, but in peace. You could see the tears in their eyes. You could feel it in their voices. They spoke and said, you know what? There is something I'm feeling stronger, that I'm connecting with my motherland. And as that is happening, there is an African youth rising meanwhile. Young Africans are no longer waiting for permission. They are creating their own media. We are creating here our own business and our own governments. The youths of Kenya, the youths of Nigeria and South Africa, and all of them, Senegal, name those countries, are challenging corruption, are challenging colonial mediocrity, colonial mindset, okay? We have a return of our cultural pride. For years, they made us ashamed of our skin, our hair, and our accents, but right now we are accepting. Right now, you can't not tell someone something about a black person. We are accepting our... And the first thing to do in this world is accepting yourself. Yeah, do not diminish yourself. That's all I have for today. In the next episode, peace out. I'm feeling bad. Let me do something and then we will talk on the next episode.